Hello friends, it's Chari here, and today I'm making two cards using the Tiny Winter Friends stamp set. I'm making some winter themed cards, and I'll be combining this stamp set with some other stamp sets to create these two cards. So let's get started. For my card today, I'm taking the Tiny Winter Friends and pairing it with some houses and trees from Winter Village. I'm starting out with some Moonstone cardstock, and I'm going to darken up the top of it a little bit with some broken china distressing, just to give it that kind of dark, winter snowy sky look. I'm only worrying about this inking towards the top because I'm going to be covering up the bottom with some snowy hills. And before I start to assemble things, I want to go ahead and add my sentiment. So you can see I've already cut my stitched hillside backdrop portrait from some white cardstock. This is going to be where I put all my little images. And I've just put this here for placement so that I can place my sentiment stamps. I'm using the sentiment that says Holiday Greetings with Love from All of Us from the Winter Village stamp set. So I'll just pick that up with the door of my MISTI, and then I'm just going to stamp that down in some black ink up there towards the top. So this will give me room to fill the bottom with all my cute little images. I wanted to add some snow as well, so I've cut a little scrap piece of cardstock to cover up my sentiment, and I'm using some white pigment watercolor to add some snow to the sky. Now I could have done this without covering up the greeting, but I don't want any of those white spots to get on my greeting. I want it to be nice and crisp. And I also could have done this before and then stamped it, but I also didn't want to stamp over a white pigment paint so that my greeting didn't have any spots in it. Now I want to add a third hill to this little backdrop, so I'm popping in that negative piece that came out when I die cut the whole backdrop, and then I'm taking one of the stitched hillsides and I'm just lining it up to the left there, at the top left, and I'll just cut a third hill, and this I can just pop right back into that opening when I glue it onto my background. So I'll just go ahead and glue this to my background. I've put liquid glue all the way around the frame and onto the hillsides, and I'll just line that up with my background piece. And then I'll just add that third little hill right into that corner where I cut it out. So that's going to fit in there perfectly because I used the piece that was left over from when I die cut that background. And before I start to add too many pieces, I'm going to go ahead and add this whole thing to my card base. So now I can start to put all my cute little images. I'm starting out with this little cluster of 3 houses, and I'm going to tuck that behind this hill because this one has a little hill stamped to it, so I kind of want to hide that a little bit. So I'm just going to tuck that behind there. And then for the other little house that I have, I'm going to pop that up on some foam on this hillside that's in the front. So I'm just going to kind of balance it out with my 2 sets of houses, one on the left and one on the right. And then I've got these cute little trees also from that stamp set. I'm adding my little winter friends that are building a snowman up on this top hill. And then I'm just scattering my trees around to figure out sort of where I want them to fill it in. I've got all my other little people here waiting to be stuck down. So for these pieces in front of this little cluster of houses, I'm just going to pop the trees up with some foam. And I'm going to do the same with the little girl and the reindeer so that they're kind of in front of those houses that are sitting up on that hill in the background. And then I'm going to do the same for these trees and these little people on the bottom as well. So I'm just adding some foam squares to those. I like that you get 2 different size trees in the Winter Village set. That really helps kind of set the scene. And then I'm adding some foam to these 2 little people right at the bottom. So I kind of have the rule of 3 little clusters of people on my card. And then finally, to add some glittery snow, I'm adding it to the snow on the houses. And then I'm also going to add just a little bit to the trees as well. So you kind of get that icy look. And then here is my finished card, and I just think it's so cute, and those tiny winter friends pair perfectly with the winter village houses. So here is a look at that finished card. And now let's move on to the second Tiny Winter Friends card. So for my tiny friends on this card, I'm going to be pairing it with the Santa and the little dog from the Tiny Christmas stamp set. And I've already cut out all my little images. And I'm going to be using the Peekaboo backdrop die to create a grid with some little scenes. I've also used that die to cut out some pixie dust cardstock. That'll be my snow. And my background, or my sky, I'm going to use some of the Let It Shine snowflake paper. I like this lighter blue with the really tiny snowflakes. So I've cut a piece of that to 4¼ by 5½ so it fits on my card base. And I'm just putting adhesive all around it and putting it right onto my card base. Next, I can add my bright red frame using some liquid glue. I'm just going to trace all the way around that with my glue tube. And then I'll just glue that directly on to that pattern paper. So this is going to set up the card with these cute little squares and rectangles that are going to be each of the little scenes on this card. So I'm using sentiment from the Offset Sentiments Christmas set, and I like this set because it also has some small words too, which fit perfectly in these little squares. And I'm just using the sentiment that says Merry Christmas, and I'm going to go ahead and just stamp that towards the top of this last little square. So once I have that stamped down, I can work on my glittery snowy hillsides. So I've only cut one of each of the sides of the squares because I can use the top and the bottom to create my 2 hillsides that I need for my 2 openings of the same size. So I'm just using the Stitch Hillside border dies. And once I kind of get this where I want it, I'll just hold it in place with some tape and run that through my die cut machine. And then I can just glue it down and it pops perfectly right into that opening because I used that same die to cut my glitter cardstock. And I'll just repeat the same process for each of these little openings, creating some glittery snowy hillsides for each of my little scenes for my little people to stand on. So once I have all these snowy hillsides in place in each of these little openings, I can start to place my images and create my little scenes. So for this one, I've got 3 of my little winter friends, and I'm going to pop these up with some foam so we have some dimension because everything so far is glued directly to the card base. So I've got 3 little friends here, and then I'm also adding in the little wiener dog from Tiny Christmas because he's just so cute and he is perfectly sized to go with these tiny winter friends. In that bottom right square where I put my sentiment, I'm adding the cute little snowman, which I just think is adorable, and then another little friend building the snowman. So for that top left one, I've got 2 of the little friends, and they're just going to be under the mistletoe. So I stamped the mistletoe with some green ink, and then I just used a colored pencil to color in the bow. And then finally, for my last little scene here, I'm adding that present to the sleigh. And I'm going to put that towards the right, popping that up on foam as well. And then Santa will be towards the left, and then I'll have my little reindeer pulling the sleigh. So I'm kind of figuring out where that reindeer needs to go. I'll go ahead and put him down. I'm going to use that rope or that tie to figure out how far away from the sleigh he needs to be. Santa is standing out here feeding the reindeer. I also think Santa would be cute in the sleigh as well, but he's sort of facing the wrong direction, so I wanted to put him in front with the reindeer. It just filled the square a little better to have those 3 images. And then I'll attach the little tie from the reindeer to the sleigh. And then this is my finished card that was super simple and fun with those cute little tiny winter friends and all those little scenes. So here is a look at that second card with those cute little scenes. I just love making these cards with those little scenes and all those little squares. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.